His book sets the scene for Milwaukee's live theater and will spotlight some of those who helped give us this rich history. Author Jonathan West is my special guest next on I Remember. Hi, I'm Jim Peck. Welcome to I Remember. Joining me tonight is Jonathan West, a writer, director, and actor. He's also the managing director of Sunset Playhouse. The theatrical history of Milwaukee dates back to the 1800s, and Jonathan has put together a book to share the story. Take a look.
Milwaukee's live theater talent. Helen Hayes appeared on stage at the Pabst. A young Jackie Gleason performed at the Davidson Theater. Famous baritone John Raitt sang in musicals at the Melody Top. Other entertainers under the big tent included Howard Keel and Martha Raye. Actress Betty White was here for a summer stock musical. For a time, the resident choreographer was Tommy Tune, of later Broadway fame. As regional theater emerged, the city was among the first to host professional companies. The Milwaukee Repertory Theater was in the new Performing Arts Center in the late 1960s, but its origin dates back to the Fred Miller Theater in the 1950s. 50 years ago, the Skylight Opera began with Gilbert and Sullivan Productions. The driving force behind it all was the legendary Claire Richardson. Co-founded by Montgomery Davis and Ruth Schutzen, the Milwaukee Chamber Theater began in 1975 at the Milwaukee Rep. Schuh was a playwright in residence at the Rep when his 1983 hit The Foreigner premiered there. Younger actors honed their craft with groups such as First Stage Children's Theater and the African American Children's Theater Company. The Sunset Playhouse opened its doors to community theater in 1960. Actor Alan Furlan was the artistic director for almost 30 years. Next Act Theater goes for the intimate and powerful in a small setting. The same can be said for Renaissance Theater Works, a company founded by and run by women. Milwaukee Shakespeare often provided a new take on the classics, and Theater X was experimental both here and abroad. Milwaukee Dance Theater is now Theater Gigante. The Stackner Cabaret is going strong. The Boulevard Theater found success in a storefront, and even Insurgent Theater has found a home in Milwaukee, as well as an onstage look at Milwaukee theater throughout the years.
In your book, you've got an interesting quote, and it says, many Milwaukee producers have looked the other way when it came to the letter of the law. What did you mean by that?
Many Milwaukee producers have had expansive egos, and along with their expansive egos have gone new ways of thinking about how they can get a show up. This has meant characters like Claire Richardson, who really had probably the most expansive of all the egos.
Yes, and we'll get to Claire. He's a show in himself.
Yes. So it wasn't so much a matter of law breaking, but it was bending the rules to make sure that the best production could get on stage.
I thought maybe you were referring to late Father John Walsh at Marquette, who had a penchant for not bothering too much with rights for various...
He set up a flatbed truck once on the street and did a big production of Oliver.
Yes. And I remember talking to him years ago, and I said, I'm kind of fascinated that you got rights to this because it's still running on Broadway. And there was something that, I said, Father, you do have rights to this, don't you? He said, oh, they wouldn't bother a little Jesuit in Milwaukee. And he would never admit that he didn't have them. But anyway, if pressed, if somebody asked me, when did live theater start in Milwaukee, I'd probably off the top of my head say probably mid-50s, Miller Theater. And then if somebody said, now, Jim, think, I would probably think, okay, probably turn of the century, maybe the Nunemacher Opera. Am I even close?
You got to go back about 50 years
really?
From there. Yeah, mid-1800s, and the first recorded production in Milwaukee is a production of The Merchant of Venice. Now, it was done by a touring group called the Detroit-Chicago Company. And
Chicago always got it.
Detroit-Chicago Company liked Milwaukee so much that they broke off and they formed their own company here that was called the Rice Stock Company. And fans of Chicago history will know that John Rice, who was their benefactor, would end up being the mayor of Chicago a little bit later on. Now, the Rice Stock Company was formed from these players from the Detroit-Chicago Company who what we can kind of ascertain from history is they weren't maybe the premier players of that group.
Not the creme de la creme.
Right. They were maybe the third-rate players
I
in
see.
that group.
But they resided here. Then they became our company?
Right.
And about
right.
when?
That was about 1850, right around 1850. It was actually before Milwaukee had been chartered fully as a city, before Solomon Juneau became the mayor. So.
You talk about the Merchant of Venice as the first play. What kind of other theater would somebody have seen back around 1850 in Milwaukee?
Well, one thing that's part of Milwaukee theater in the early days of Milwaukee theater was the German language theater, because we have such a rich heritage of German language speakers here in Milwaukee. And the German language theater really appealed to audiences who wanted to hear plays in their mother tongue, and that went on in pretty popular succession through the mid-30s. And there were still some other
mid-1930s.
Yeah, mid-1930s. There were still some other groups that would linger on for years and years beyond that. I actually just talked to a woman who had told me about experiences she had 30, 40 years ago with German language theater here in Milwaukee. So.
Let's go back to those the Chicago, Detroit hoo-ha that became the Rice Stock Company. Where did they perform?
They performed on in a courtroom of a place called Military Hall, which is located where City Hall is right now.
Oh, okay.
So equivalent maybe to a group performing in a high school cafeteria, maybe.
And about that level, from what you imply.
Yeah.
Not that either of us was there.
No. They did plays like The Drunkard, something called Dumbbells. So plays.
One of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, yeah.
So this was a step down from the Merchant of Venice.
Yes, it was. It was. But they were popular plays that appealed to.
Well, there couldn't have been that many of us in Milwaukee at that time.
No, but from early on, people wanted live entertainment, and part of that live entertainment was live theater.
So we had a German-speaking theater, which was really the dominant theater. Do we have other ethnic groups?
One company of note is the Perhif Players. They were a Yiddish theater company, and they were internationally known, actually, here, and they started doing Yiddish theater, and that group, too, existed well into the 1970s. I've actually come into contact with lots of people who had performed with
I grew up here. I was never aware of that.
Yeah, and they performed in different pockets around the city, and they never had a real permanent home, so they didn't establish themselves as some of the bigger German language theaters did, and some of the German language theaters had places built for them. They were so successful. So, but yeah, the Perhif Players it definitely appealed to a Yiddish-speaking audience that we have. We have a rich history too of African American theaters. We have history of Latino theater groups, and they just keep popping up. Our history keeps evolving, really.
I had no idea that, frankly, before I read this, that Milwaukee was that good a theater town. Our Christmas week, Easter week, and a week in Milwaukee.
Right, right. Well, part of my reason for writing the book is that I'm a participant in this history. I am an actor and a director and an administrator in the theater in Milwaukee, and I started to look around and I started to realize that there was a generation of people that would not know some of the names that are highlighted in this book. Names like Claire Richardson, names like Father John Walsh, names like Bob Pittman from Alverno. Actors that we have loved and cherished over the years, people like Montgomery Davis, the Norman Moseses of our generation, people like that I wanted to make sure that there was some type of, at least a broad strokes, history of what has happened in this town, because it is an extraordinary amount of activity for a town our size.